Hey there, welcome back to B.Hooked, part 2 of the crochet doll series. I hope you've been enjoying this project so far. Well, in video number 1 we covered the legs and the body. If you happen to be finding this video first, you'll definitely want to go back and start there, because in this video we're going to have a look at the arms, the head, facial features, hair. We're basically going to put everything all together in this tutorial. Now, once again, you can find the written instructions over on my website at bhookedcrochet.com/doll, and you can also find instructions on where you can order your yarn directly from yourinspirations.com. You can find all the information right there on that page. We're going to use a lot of the techniques that we learned in video number 1, for example, that magic ring and the increasing, some of the decreasing as well. We're going to use those techniques for the finishing parts of our doll. So if you need to go back and review those, I recommend you do that there. The first thing we're going to have a look at is how to crochet the arms. Now the next element we're going to crochet is the arms, and what I've done here is I went ahead and worked up that magic ring with 6 single crochets in the middle, just like we did for the legs, and we're ready to move on to the second round. We want to go ahead and find our first stitch, insert your hook in there, and go ahead and make a single crochet. Now you actually don't have to mark this one with a stitch marker. We aren't going to increase any more for the arms. These are going to be real skinny little arms, and it's a little bit more difficult to crochet because it is a very small piece. So just bear that in mind as we move on to the next stitch. You'll insert your hook into that next stitch and make a single crochet. And I do promise that it gets a little bit easier the more length you have. So this first 2, 3, 4 rounds are going to be pretty difficult, but it does get better once you have some, well, practice under your belt and a little bit more work to hold on to. So the objective here is just to make 1 single crochet into every single stitch until our arm measures a certain length. So a lot like we experienced with the leg, we're creating a tube. It's just a slightly smaller tube than the other one. So you can already see that it started to curve upward. And so this is my starting edge. When I take my measurement, that's where I want to start. And when it measures about 4 inches long, then we're ready to fasten off. Now go ahead and get yourself to that point. We'll briefly cover how to fasten off, and we'll be ready to move on. And when you're ready to fasten off the arm, we're going to use the same technique that we used for the legs. So you'll just find your next stitch, make a slip stitch there. So grab that working yarn and pull it through the stitch and then through the loop on your hook. Then we can go ahead and trim our yarn and make sure you leave yourself a nice long tail here. We're going to use this tail to sew it onto the body in just a bit. Now take that tail, pull it through, and fasten it off. Now I have actually chosen not to stuff the arms because I want there to be a little bit more flexibility in this, and if we stuff it, then it will get really stiff and kind of rigid. But you can use your judgment there. If you want to lightly stuff it, you can absolutely do so. Most of your stuffing will come with some kind of wooden dowel that you can actually use to just stuff it through there, because we have a very, very small opening. Otherwise, you really don't need to stuff this. You're going to get a nice result either way. Now, obviously, you want to go ahead and crochet up your second arm, and we're going to attach them to the body in just a bit. Now, we're moving on to the head now, and the instructions for the first 2 rounds are the same as what we did for the legs. So you want to go ahead and make your magic ring with 6 single crochet. Then your next round, we're going to increase every stitch, and we'll start off here with round number 3. I'm going to make 1 single crochet in the first stitch, and then don't forget to carry your stitch marker. Then we'll make 2 single crochets in the next. Followed by 1 single crochet and 2, And this is our repeat for this round. We're going to increase our stitch count from 12 stitches to 18. Now moving on to round number 4, we're going to start this time with 1 single crochet in the first and the second, and then we'll increase. So there's the first, that's the second, and then our increase. 2 single crochets in the next. And that's our repeat. All we changed here is the number of stitches in between our increases. So we'll make 1 single crochet into each of the next 2, followed by 2 single crochets in the next. Now moving on to round number 5 of the head, we're going to increase one more time. This time we're going to start with 1 single crochet in the first 3. So there's 1, 2, 3, and then increase. We're then going to move on to round number 6. It's going to be one more final increasing round for the head. We're going to make 4 stitches in between those increases, and at the end of this round we will have a total of 36 stitches. Now once you have all of your increases in place, you'll have a total, once again, of 36 stitches. Your work will look something like this, and we're going to move into the flat section where we no longer have to increase. We do want to keep track of our stitch marker though. That typically will help me to count my rounds as I go, and we're going to use it when we do our decreasing too. So we want to keep it in place, but all we need to do is make 1 single crochet into every stitch, working in both the front loop and the back loop of that stitch there, and we're going to do this for a total of 9 rounds. Once you're finished working this flat section, then we're going to move into a decreasing section. And I just want to let you know to take note of the pattern that you saw while we were increasing. So while we were increasing, we were placing a certain number of stitches in between our increases, and just like we saw for the body, we're going to be working that very much in the same way, so that we have a certain number of stitches in between the decreases. We're going to work that single crochet 2 together, and we'll look at it real quick here as we go along. Once you get through that long flat section where we don't increase or decrease or anything like that, we want to go ahead and add the eyes and the nose. You can really get creative here and place the eyes and nose wherever you want. If you want something that looks very similar to mine, what I did was I counted up from the bottom and counted each round. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So in between 12 and 13 is where I want to place my eyes. So you'll just stick it in between a couple of stitches, so in between those 2 rounds. And then I also counted over about 3 stitches. Make sure you're getting that in the same place, and then we can go ahead and just place the backs on once you're certain you like their placement. Now what we're going to do is make this the bottom of the head and this the top of the head. And we're doing that because when we decrease, we're going to see some holes and some gaps, and it's not going to look nearly as neat and clean as this. And since we're going to see most of this, and then all of the top is going to be covered up by hair, we want to go ahead and place the nose right here. Now at this part, we're ready to start decreasing, and we're going to do so in the same increments that we increased from before, we're going to use the single crochet 2 together technique to do those decreasing. So we're going to have a total of 5 decreasing rounds. The first round, we want to place 4 single crochets in between our decreases. The row after that, we'll place 3 in between the decreases. The one after that, 2, and then 1. So we're just decreasing the number of stitches in between the decreases. Then once you have your decreases almost finished, before you get to those last couple of rounds, you want to go ahead and stuff your head while the hole is still big enough to do so. You'll get it nice and firm. However much stuffing you want to put in there is going to do the trick. Then we're going to finish up our final round, fasten off. Now before we can sew the head into place, we need to first sew the arms in place. It's going to make things a little bit more tidy. And rather than sewing them directly on the side, what I like to do is just go in a few stitches. They tend to lay a little bit better that way. You'll just thread the tail on your darning needle, and we really just need to sew it to one side. So once you get the right place, you'll just kind of go back and forth. I'm going to catch both layers of the arm there and really just whip stitch. Kind of going in the same stitch because the arm is pretty small. We don't have too many stitches there to cover. But do the best you can to get it to lay as flush as possible. So we're kind of squishing it down. And then of course you want to make some extra stitches so we know it's nice and secure. And then once that's the case, you can go ahead and knot this with, this is the tail for where we fastened off the body. And that's going to give it a little extra security, and there's really no need to weave these tails in. All we have to do is just shove them in the body and they'll be hidden forever. And once we get that one finished, then of course we'll just do the same thing for the other arm, and then we'll be set up to sew on the head. So we're ready now to sew the head into place, and honestly this is probably one of the most challenging parts, or at least it was for me, is getting the head straight. Now you can use some safety pins or some stitch markers to stitch it into place if you'd like. That definitely helps. However, you don't necessarily have to. Just put it in place and make sure you hold on to it. So I'm going to start sewing here on the back side because that's where my tail is coming from for my body. So I'm going to use this tail to sew it into place. Now once you get the first couple of stitches, it's going to continue to get easier. So you don't have to worry so much about the head shifting and turning and being crooked. And really there's no right or wrong way to this. What I always try to make sure is I catch a big, kind of a chunk of stitches here on the head, and then I'm catching the stitch on that final round of the body. And I'll make a couple of stitches and I'll check to make sure things are still straight and I'm still satisfied with what I see, because the head still turns at this point. So if you make a little goof, all you have to do is correct that. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'll keep going. Now that we've crocheted our entire doll, the next thing we need to do is work on the hair. So what I like to do is create a hair cap first. And what you'll do is follow the written instructions. You'll grab your Peyton's Alpaca Blend yarn, your larger hook, and you're going to work through using the same techniques that we saw for the doll, the magic ring, the increases. We have 4 rounds of increases, followed by 2 flat rows where we don't increase or decrease. And we're going to get a little shape that looks something like this. Now from here, we're going to attach the strands of hair to all of these little stitches, fill it out, and that's what we're going to do next. When you're ready to start adding the strands of hair, you're going to need to make several cuts of yarn that are about 20 inches long. For me, that's going to be about the right hair length, and it'll give me a little bit of flexibility to trim it as I need it. But if you want shorter hair, of course, cut shorter strands. Just know that we're going to basically have these flipped in half. So this is going to be the true length, or half of your cut is going to be the true length of the hair once it's added into place. Now, if you've ever added tassels, then this technique is going to be really familiar with you. And we're going to use this hair cap as the foundation. Now, I find that it's really easy to start adding along this front edge because I have some stitches to work into from where I worked that final round. But as we progress, we're going to have to get a little bit creative in our placement. So you might find that working your hook underneath a strand or a leg of that stitch is going to be the perfect place. I'm going to demonstrate that here. So I have my strand of hair folded in half. I'll place that on my hook and pull it through. And just give yourself a little slack so you can fit your fingers in there to pull the strand through, or those two ends through. And then you'll just pull that tight. And that's all there is to it. We're going to do this over and over. You'll fill it as much as you possibly can, or as much as you want for how thick you want the hair to be. You're the true artist here, so that's the technique you'll need to know. It's been a pleasure teaching you how to crochet this doll here today in this two-part video series. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to leave them in the comments section below this video, or you can direct them to the pattern page on my website. That link once again is bhookedcrochet.com/doll. I'm right here to help you with any troubles or struggles that you might have along the way. Now you might be thinking, my doll looks great, she's got this beautiful face and some hair, but she really needs some clothes. I agree with you there. One of the cool things about this design is that we can take it and make it into whatever we want. It's something that I can build upon and create more patterns for in the future, as well as some tutorials. So have a look out for those. I'll be including some patterns for some clothing, different accessory items that are going to be used for this doll. As those resources become available, you'll find them linked in the video description below, as well as over on that pattern page. Once again, that link is bhookedcrochet.com/doll. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. It's been a real pleasure. I hope you'll share some photos with me on social using #BHooked. I always love to see what you're up to, and I look forward to serving you in the next video. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.